Hey everybody, this is Steve. Now we're into week 2, and so now we're really getting into the nitty gritty of the class. I wanted to record a little intro video here to introduce this discussion point about where we're at. And I guess by way of introduction, let me just say that one of the things to me about writing for the World Wide Web that's different from some of the other classes that I teach is that it's very web-like. And what I mean by that is that all the assignments kind of happen at the same time. They're not, most classes that I teach, there's a linear order. You do this, then you do that, and then you do the other thing. In this class, in a lot of ways, the best way to approach this would be to have me giving you all the reading and all the assignments a month ago, and then you finish all that, and then come back and then we talk about it. But obviously, that's not really possible. I guess what I'm getting at is that this class isn't quite as linear as most other classes, which is why I'm going to go over all the major assignments right now, although the Codecademy project is probably the thing you're going to work on first. I'm going to talk about the Codecademy thing actually last, but talk about the other assignments first, okay? All right, so let me go ahead and look at the website here. I'm just looking under where it says writing assignments, and I'm going to go to first where it says the semester social media project, because this is probably the most straightforward of the assignments for the semester. You can read through the details here. We can certainly talk about this in the questions below. But basically, everyone needs to sign up for Twitter and for LinkedIn. You need to sign up for Twitter just because we might play with Twitter a little bit in the course of the semester, and I want you to sign up for LinkedIn because I want you to join the group that I've set up for written communications major. And maybe LinkedIn becomes one of the social medias that you decide to follow in some detail. Okay, and then the next thing you want to do is you want to join 2 other social media activities you're not engaged in. Okay, so just to sort of explain that a little bit, if you are like me, an avid Facebooker, then no, you can't do Facebook. If you have a Facebook account but you haven't checked it in like a year or months or something like that, then I can be talked into saying that is a current social media that you're not engaged in. But for the most part, what I want you to do is find some other sort of social media space platform that you haven't done yet and you want to explore it. This has become more difficult in recent semesters than it has been in the past because it's interesting because I've been given this assignment in one fashion or another for about 4 or 5 years. And 4 or 5 years ago, it was really easy to say, find 2 other social media projects assignments because almost everybody was just on Facebook and that was it. Now, lots of people are like, well, I do these 8 different things. I don't know what other social media to use. But if you're in that situation, let me know. I do have a list. If you look further down on this page in terms of the getting examples part, getting started examples, there's lots of things that could count as social media that will work there. In any event, what I want you to do is sign up for 2 social medias that you're not familiar with, and I want you to engage in them by posting something, doing something at least once a week on each one of these new social medias, okay? Then at different points in the schedule, and you can look at the schedule to see the details on this, I'll ask you to post some updates, reflections on what this experience is like. And I guess the best way to put it is imagine that you're sort of an anthropologist of some sort and you've gone off to a distant land and you want to study a new different culture. Tell us what it's like to be in this social media. In other words, explain to us what are some of the conversations you've been in about. What seems to be some of the conventions of this? What are some of the things that surprise you or that you find interesting or whatever? So tell us about this space that you've entered and give us your impressions of it. And you can also, by the way, along with those 2, you can also write about Twitter and LinkedIn as social media spaces, especially if they're new to you. Okay, I will flip over to the calendar here just for a second real quick to highlight when these things are these assignments are due. The first progress report for social media is due on September. I guess by what day is it here? It says part of the first end of the day, end of the week. So that would be September 30th for this. And by then, you need to actually tell us what the social media projects, social media that you're following, are going to be as well. Have any questions about which ones to follow? Shoot me an email. I'll try to give you an answer. Okay. So that's how that assignment. So there's updates here. There's another update here, October 14th. There's a last update here, November 18th, And then after these updates, there's a essay that you need to write that is due towards the end of the semester. Actually, it's due here on December 5th. That's towards the end of the semester. Okay, so that's a semester social media project. The next thing I want to talk about real quickly is the usability text to hypertext project. Basically, what you need to do with this is you need to find a piece of writing that you have created in the past. An essay for another class would be ideal. And then I want you to transform that into a website. There's some pretty strict rules here. Well, strict is a little strong. There's some rules here that you need to follow in terms of the kind of text that you need to pick. Okay. The first thing is that it's got to be some kind of essay that existed previously as a words in a row text and not as a hypertext. Okay. And it also has to be something that's not sort of obviously convertible into a hypertext. As I say here, I think converting a resume into a hypertext would be too easy and it'd probably be too short. Same is probably true with a piece of poetry. On the other hand, something that you wrote for a class is 30 pages long might be far too much. Okay. I say here that in my view, the ideal text to work with is a paper that you wrote from a previous class, because by definition you have the rights to do anything with that paper that you want. And you own the rights to that text, and it's somewhere between 1,200 and 3,000 words long. Okay, you'll need to pick up this in the calendar. I'll go back to the calendar, point out some of the dates of this as to when you need to select this essay by. If you really are having an impossible time coming up with an essay that will work for this assignment, let me know, and we can talk about the texts that are available on the Internet Archive website. Okay. You need to tell me about what text you're going to use, and I need to approve it, because I get a chance to sort of like say yes or no in terms of how that's going to work. That's the first part of the first part is that's actually some of the second part in terms of picking it, but you want to like start worrying about what essay to pick fairly soon. The first part has to do with the usability test that we'll be doing. We'll be doing a sort of a quasi-vague test of usability where we outline some of these concepts and apply them to the English department website. But as you'll see, it's not really a usability test, because it's more like a usability quiz where each of you are going to be playing the role of a subject entering into this test, but it won't be quite the same way. The next part of the usability test has to do with your essay that you're going to be creating. As I say here on the website, there's at least two different parts where this comes into place. The first part is there's a pre-test where you're going to write up on a piece of paper probably, and maybe a series of index cards, what you think your website will look like when you start actually designing it. And you need to find someone in your life, roommate, family member, friend, whoever. You need to find someone in your life who you can show this website to and get some basic impressions on that pre-test. Okay. The second test is a little bit more formal in that you're going to actually have, by this point in time, created a full-blown draft of a website. And for the website, to make this website, you're probably going to either use WordPress or the software that we'll be talking about later on called Wix, which is a free, kind of clunky but still free tool that you can use to make dynamic websites. In any event, for the second part, you're going to find two users, again, friends, family, whoever. It could be one of the people, at least in the pre-test version. It could be somebody different. Somebody from outside of our class is the key thing. And you're going to actually have some specific questions that you're going to want to ask them. And you're going to follow a protocol for usability testing. You're going to get some feedback, and you're going to write a report about that as well. Okay. And then the last thing is that, the other thing about the usability testing in both cases is you actually have to do this in person with someone. So that's part of the constraints in terms of who to find to do this project. It has to be somebody who can, you can physically, in real-time space, sit with. Okay, and then there's a final essay along with, of course, the website that you create for this assignment. Okay, so that's the usability / text to hypertext project. We've already started talking a little bit about setting up your writing for the writing for the 444 portfolio. This is where we'll be using WordPress to do that. If I have you listed over here, well, over here. If your name is here under students and that link works, that means that you have sent me the link that I need to post on the class website. If you haven't sent me that link yet, you need to do that really soon. A couple of you asked, can I use a previous WordPress setup that I have? Maybe you took a class with me for 328. Maybe you have another WordPress setup for some other reason. Can I just reuse that same one? Well, the answer is no, you can't. But it's really easy on WordPress to set up as many individual blogs into one account as you want. So just follow the instructions for how to create a new blog on WordPress, and you'll be up and running with your new site in no time. Okay. The last thing to talk about are these Codecademy exercises. Now, back in the old days, when I first started teaching this class, the only way to make pages on the web, the only way to make a web page was to learn HTML, which is hypertext markup language. And you did it with coding software on a computer. And that's just the way that it was. And then a few years after I started getting involved in this, and I started teaching people how to make web pages in about 1994, 95, something like that. A few years after that came along this thing called cascading style sheets. And the difference between HTML and style sheets and CSS is that HTML describes content and CSS describes what something will look like, how it will behave. For example, and sometimes these things get combined in different ways. So a bulleted list is HTML because it's describing a kind of content, but it also has kind of a CSS element to it because a bulleted list has a certain look. We'll get into more of this as the semester goes along. But anyways, the point is this. Back in the old days, we would spend a lot of time in this class on HTML and CSS, and I would make students buy these really big fat books, and we would get into the nitty-gritty and stuff like that. Well, here we are, 20 some odd years later with the World Wide Web. I think that they just celebrated the 25th anniversary of the creation of the web or something like that. And a lot of time has changed, but some things haven't changed. So the things that have changed are almost every website that you see on the internet nowadays is not made from just HTML and CSS. Almost every website that you may see, like for example WordPress or something like that, has some other kind of component in it. And we're not going to talk about that in this class because frankly that starts to get into the territory of computer programming in a way that I'm not really comfortable teaching, and I think it takes us away from the focus on writing for the class. I think it's important to learn, especially if you're interested in going into this kind of work, but I'm just not sure that this is the space in which to do it. However, HTML and CSS, which were the cornerstones of the web 25 odd years ago, are still the cornerstones of the web. You still really need to understand and wrap your head around conceptually some of the basics of how hypertext markup language works, how CSS works. So that's why I've assigned you to do these Codecademy exercises, okay? Now, just to look at the website here for a second. If you go to this first link on the Codecademy exercises, that will take you to the website. Mine's finished because I've done this a while ago, okay? But just to sort of walk you through this a little bit, Unit 1, at the end of it, has a simple website that you'll create. Unit 2 ends up in a simple website, again, with some more structuring uses of lists and things like that you'll see. Unit 3, again, a more simple website, clickable photo page is what you end up with there. 4, this is where you start getting into CSS, and you end up here with a design of a button that you can put on a website. 5, you get into even more CSS stuff, and this is where you start to like sort things. As it says, sorting your friends, but it really has to do with positioning stuff with CSS. And last but not least is build your resume in CSS. Unit 7 is something that you have to pay for, and we're not going to get into that. I haven't worked with this yet before. I have no idea how that works. I bet it's pretty cool, but if you want to pay for it, then you can pay for it. Okay. Each one of these exercises, you end up with an HTML document, but as I explain here, it's not as straightforward as all that to make it into a website. So what you need to do is, first off, look at this link here. I'm making your Codecademy projects into real web pages. Okay, try to follow along with some of this stuff and see if that makes sense. And then the other thing is that there's also this little movie and introduction to how to set this up as a how to set up your people.eMissionStudyEdu server space, and I have a little bit of movie about that as well. Okay. Now, ultimately, what you're going to end up with, and I'll scroll down here to my links here. Ultimately, this is what my website looks like. It has the address on people. It has the address people.eMissionStudyEdu /444. And then these are each of the exercises. So the intro looked like that. The social network one looks like this. The social networking, the sorting friends one looks like this. You can see I didn't do that completely right. The clickable photo one looks like this. Again, I didn't do this completely right, but you get the general idea. The button looks like this, and the resume looks like this. Okay. Now, the way this works is that you have to complete this project for in order to move on. Okay, and there's basically, my experience has been, there's basically two kinds of completions on the Codecademy exercises. Great, congratulations, thumbs up, you got it all right. The second one is almost right, but you missed something along the lines. Or third is you didn't get this right at all. Now, I'm happy to meet with anybody, but if you get the third one where you don't get this, where I say you didn't get this right, then I'm going to keep making you do this until you do get it right. Everyone is going to complete these exercises. This is kind of a pass-fail sort of thing. You have to at least complete these exercises in order to pass the course. Okay. Now, let me mention here the second part of this assignment is, so the first part is working through the Codecademy assignment. The second part is I want you to go to the Codecademy tutorial pages and pick something else that you're interested in working through. So I will give you an example of what I mean. If I go to the Codecademy page here, you'll see that we have stuff on Ruby on Rails. We have stuff on making an interactive website, and it explains how to do that kind of stuff. We have stuff on stuff I don't understand what it is. Git is another one. We have something on Java. And what I want you to do is I want you to pick one of these activities that's based basically on your skill level, right? Or your own personal skill level. And I want you to try to work through one of these activities. It doesn't really matter that much, frankly, if you succeed at working through the second one. But what I'm really trying to get you to do is have the experience of what is it like to work through one of these coding exercises on your own, following those instructions. So the second part of that is what I mean by this. And then the third part is, and this is due with the second part, is a short reflection about these tutorials. What about these exercises frustrated you, or did you find too easy? What was your proudest moment with HTML and CSS? What do you want to learn more about HTML and CSS? What was the second tutorial, and how did that go? Okay. Now to look at the schedule on this, you'll see that you need to start getting stuff going on these Codecademy exercises pretty soon. So by the end of this week, for example, I'm expecting you to have your people.eMissionStudyEdu account set up, and you can see the deadlines as we go along here. You should be finished by all of these units by the end of week 4 or September 30th. And if you get stuck, and they're due on October 7th, if you get stuck, then by then we're going to need to sit down and chat about this. Okay. Let me just mention a couple of the things about this assignment first before I get done. There might be you might have some challenges with this as we go along. That is totally fine. But be aware, and you'll notice this with my email thing, be aware that if you email me a question, I will answer you, but I will probably wait at least 12 hours, if not 24, to answer you. The reason for this is because my previous experience has been, I'll get an email from a student at 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night or something like that, saying, oh my God, I can't figure this out. I can't figure this out. And then I'll start writing a response or something like that, and I'll see that email before I'll see the newest email, and I'll start writing a response to it, and then I'll realize that there's a response that they wrote again at 1 o'clock in the morning and saying, "Oh, never mind, I figured it out." So what I mean is that I won't email you back right away because there's a pretty good chance that you're going to figure out what you did before I email you back. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to mention about this is, and this may seem kind of like a strange thing to bring up, but in order to succeed at this, you need to have a happy place. So what's a happy place? Well, a happy place is really up to you. I mean, maybe it's something like a beautiful sunset in up north of Traverse City, or maybe it's a beautiful sunset in a faraway place like in Italy. Um, Maybe it's these beautiful bucolic views of Capri and Isla Capri and Naples and such. Or maybe it's just your backyard. Maybe it's just a garden view. It's up to you. The key is, though, that you have to have some kind of happy place because these exercises can be really frustrating. And if you don't have a happy place, you get stuck on something, your little one just go, don't do that. Don't do that. Go to your happy place. Go back to the instructions. Work through it all. And it'll all be fine. Okay? Now, like I said, if you really do get stuck, I'm here to help. Email me. Set up time to meet with me. And we will all get through all of this, one way or the other. In the meantime, ask whatever questions, concerns, things like that you have below here, and start working through these exercises because they all kind of come together kind of at the same time. The web part of writing for the web. Okay, I'll see you later.